just like us, for LGBT young people.
Hello everybody, it's Arbër and welcome to the monthly Just Like Us podcast. I'm here with Elly and Heather.
Hi.
How are you guys doing?
Good.
It's too hot.
No, the sun is good. I like it.
So I just moved house literally yesterday in 35-degree weather, lugging boxes around and getting in and out of the car. I'm not enjoying the sun. The novelty is well and truly worn off.
I'll accept that it's too hot to move house, but the heat is good. My girlfriend is also such a whiner. She's like, oh my God, I just want it to be winter. I'm like, no!
I think it does depend what you're doing in the heat, because generally I enjoy it if I don't have to do anything. But the minute someone says, oh, you need to go to work and do your job and things like that, that's when it's over for me with me and heat.
It's very true. So considering it's very hot, we wanted to have a conversation about what exactly, are the best places to visit as somebody who is an LGBT plus person, going from, our past experiences, traveling, and, obviously given the fact that we are still in some kind of like lockdown coronavirus, we just wanted to speak about kind of like future aspirations and where we potentially want to go in the future in terms of our summer holidays. So Elly and Heather, like for you guys, in terms of past experiences, where did you feel most kind of safe and protected as an LGBT plus person when you've travelled?
I think for me, I spend a lot of time in Belgium because my girlfriend lives there. So if I want to see her, I tend to go there. And I feel like that has been a very safe country generally. The city's a very modern European vibe, a good sort of LGBT community, sort of like LGBT themed bookshops, bars, community venues and things, as well as just, on the street, I never feel sort of uncomfortable with, being around with my girlfriend, It's very similar to the UK of course, not always being safe, but in general, walking down the street is a very comfortable thing to do. And there's lots of community and activities and acceptance in terms of, going beyond just like it's accepted, but also it's fun to be LGBT in that place. So but yeah, that's somewhere I've had very good experiences.
I would say I went to Berlin a couple of years ago, just with my friend, but we're both bisexual, and it just felt really friendly and really nice. Like there was a really thriving community, like Elly was saying, like lots of different LGBT venues, and also just like a lot of kind of history, and like some of the graffiti and stuff was very like welcoming, and it just felt like it was a really fun place to be, and it was just a really like nice place to visit, because almost felt like you had this community in this place that you'd never been and didn't know anyone because you were all part of the LGBT community. So that was, I would say, my favourite.
I think that's such a great thing about being LGBT, is that you can go to another country and you can go in certain venues and you can feel you've got that community, even though it's a culture you don't know, it's a country you don't know any of the people there, but you can kind of walk into certain places and know that this is a safe place for me, and not only is it safe, but it's going to be fun and I'm going to be part of the group, even though I'm not previously acquainted with anyone.
Yeah, I think likewise with Heather and Elly, I went to Amsterdam, which is obviously that kind of a similar place in Europe, and I felt very accepted, and, LGBT flags everywhere. And I think Amsterdam is a very kind of, it's like a leading place for LGBT plus rights in the world. So I felt very safe there. I felt protected. It was like, obviously it had a different vibe to it, a different culture, but, it was a place where I felt accepted. And we just want to speak about more of like places that don't really get the representation in society in terms of, kind of for LGBT plus people, because, people potentially think it's not safe there. Given from my own experiences, I'm going to start the conversation off. I originally come from Kosovo, which is a part of the Balkan region, and that region of Europe isn't the most accepting when it comes to LGBT plus rights. However, I do know that there are many different kind of communities that are thriving, LGBT plus communities that are thriving in the region in terms of, different kind of clubs and cafes and bars where you really can feel a sense of acceptance. For example, I know that Turkey, Istanbul has, a huge LGBT plus scene, even though the country in terms of legislation, it's not the greatest, which is something that I feel like we also need to take into consideration as people. And I feel like doing your research is like one of the best things you could potentially do before going somewhere. I feel like doing in-depth research, and I feel like that in of itself is kind of like an experience, because, you know, obviously heterosexual people, straight people don't necessarily have to, you know, sit down and research, is this country necessarily safe for me to go on the basis of my sexuality? And so I wonder if you guys ever thought, you know, wow, I actually have to sit down and do the research before I go somewhere.
I've definitely felt a bit like that before, especially, you know, in terms of not just sexuality, but obviously also gender. You know, I present in quite a gender non-conforming way, in that it makes me stand out, whereas sometimes I think as LGBT people, some people can blend in with society more than others, which is not to say one is better or worse, but sometimes it's something that I consider more, because I know that, you know, you can stand out more with certain things. And also if you're traveling with a partner of the same gender, or, you know, in another way that makes you look obviously not cisgender and heterosexual, it's something that you just take that extra bit of precaution when you're going around.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, Ellie, because I'm definitely very aware of the fact that as a cisgender woman, I can kind of, my experiences have varied a lot, because I've travelled when I was in a relationship with a man, I've travelled on my own, I've travelled with friends, and I've not yet travelled abroad just with my girlfriend. And like the things I considered in all of those different situations really varied, because although I would always be LGBT, the way other people would view me would vary so much on those different kind of circumstances. And also I think kind of the way you experience a place does also vary. So like I visited Sydney when I was just travelling by myself. And I think that was a very different experience than if I had been with, say, a partner, because it's quite well known for being like a thriving LGBT hub, and it could have been like, so I think that would have been quite different than when I just went on my own and mostly just went to the zoo. It was great. I recommend.
You're listening to Just Like Us, the monthly show for LGBT young people.
So we just wanted to get into a conversation about kind of like, you know, there are different places in the world where LGBT plus people may potentially feel like, you know, they're not comfortable to go. For example, in South Africa, I know that, you know, there's been a lot of movement in terms of the LGBT plus community. They've always been very kind of, you know, somewhat progressive in terms of, you know, kind of giving rights towards the LGBT plus community. And I haven't personally been there myself, but in the future, it's definitely on my list as a place to go and really kind of experience. And I know that, you know, as I said, the country is really kind of making strides in terms of LGBT plus rights. So for you, where's a place you want to go in the future?
Some of my dream places. I'm very ambitious when it comes to travel, at least in terms of what I plan. Whether or not that will come to fruition. I really want to go to Greece, which I think Greece is really well known for being kind of a real hub for LGBT plus people, and the island of Lesbos is like especially well known for being amazing for LGBT plus women as particular.
And I think there's a festival that happens there yearly, don't quote me, but I think there's a festival where lesbian women go to the island and they'll all get married there as well.
Yeah.
Why did I not know about this before? This is amazing.
Yeah. The Erissos International Women's Festival, a 2-week fiesta which celebrates women who love women. And that's been going on since 2000, so that sounds like a fantastic time. What about you, Ellie? Do you have any dream destinations?
Well, as we established in the intro, I am not good with the heat. So I feel like places where I'm interested in are, you know, Canada, because it's like nice cold place. There's, you know, lots of nature in Canada that I would love to just like, I quite like, because I live in London, a lot of my holidays that I really sort of dream of and can't wait to do is just like go in and get lost in some quiet and nature for a real change of scene. So, you know, when you think of Canada, you think of all these like mountains and amazing lakes and all this kind of thing, which really I would love to go somewhere like that. And also I'm quite partial to, you know, just a holiday in the UK. Like I love a bit of UK countryside. The Peak District is amazing. and beaches around the UK as well, which I think is something we all kind of have to, as we have restrictions on travel, consider as more options of what we're realistically able to do. So, you know, places like, especially for LGBT plus people, places like Brighton, which has a huge LGBT community.
Definitely.
So you can, you know, wander around all kinds of LGBT bookshops and, you know, entertainment venues, and you can also go to the beach. Like, that's perfect.
Definitely, yeah.
Exactly.
No, I think that's such a good point. And I think, like, there are so many great places in the UK to visit, which, like, also places that you wouldn't necessarily think of. So last year I went on a holiday with my girlfriend to Scarborough in Yorkshire. That was super fun. It was a bit niche, in that if I said I was going to Scarborough to anybody over the age of 50, they were like, oh, that'll be brilliant. I went there when I was 10 and it was great. And if I said that to anybody under the age of 50, they were like, where's that? But yeah, it was really fun. We went to an arcade. There was nobody there but us. It was great. We went to the beach. We had chips. There's also a castle. So as I've said, we've really ticked off quite a few of the things that we've already mentioned are the only things I need to make a holiday perfect. So I think it is definitely, like, you know, as we're all kind of having the opportunity to think about staycations once again, there's so much of the UK to explore. Like, I have never been to Wales still. So
Really? Oh,
I know.
love a bit of Wales.
Well, I'm from Scotland, so going from Scotland to Wales is quite far, but now I'm in England, I'm like, I have no excuse. So that maybe, I mean, we'll see. Holiday planning is currently tumultuous.
Good things about, like, you know, holidays in particular. I think in the UK there's some really nice railway routes you can take through. Like, just thinking about, you know, you're saying about Wales, there's a really nice train route that takes you through a lot of scenery, and so you can do it, get to really sort of remote places without even a car, because you can sort of get off the train, walk, you know, around nature, and then come back to the train and go back the other way, you know. It's really, we're very lucky to have our trains. I'm a big fan of trains. Definitely. So
trains are good.
Please stop me now before this gets out of hand.
Is there any, like, places where you guys really want to go, which you might have some slight hesitance about, but you would really like to visit there anyway?
I feel like South America has always been very appealing to me. I'm very into, like, South American food and the culture and stuff like that. And so I always thought, you know, this, I don't want to generalize, but I thought, you know, maybe they weren't as accepting as Europe towards LGBT plus rights. However, in terms of doing research, I found that Argentina is very kind of LGBT plus accepting. You know, being LGBT plus, being gay, I think it was, has been legal there since 1887.
Oh my gosh, so that's amazing.
The UK, so
yeah, that's way better than the UK. For those that don't know, the UK date, it was something like 5 seconds ago.
1967.
1967, there you go.
Yeah, there we
so,
go. Yeah.
Way ahead of us there.
Yeah, exactly. And Buenos Aires, which is the capital city of Argentina, it's a hub for LGBT plus people out there. So I think I definitely want to visit South America, and Argentina is, like, top of my list.
Amazing. Yeah, I really want to go to Costa Rica, which again, I think, like, in kind of the central South America area, there's kind of that perception that it's quite unfriendly. And I think that can be true. But it is legal in Costa Rica to be gay, and it has been for, I think, about 50 years. Yeah. And it's been, like, for the last, like, 20 years, it's been kind of, a couple of the places have been real, like, destinations, and also kind of relating to what you were saying, Ellie, like, ecotourism destinations, and I would just really love to go. Just sometimes, you know, when you're there in your house that you've been in all of the time for the last however many months. And sometimes I just daydream about being in a rainforest in Costa Rica, and that's nice, you know? That's fun. That's a good way to while away some hours.
My fantasy is, like, a pool where in, like, somewhere with ice where there's, like, penguins jumping into a pool. It's either, you know, the South Pole or the North Pole, and I will say the wrong one, so I'm not going to guess which one that has penguins.
It's this. The South Pole has penguins and the North Pole has polar bears. Fun fact for Antarctica, that's the only continent that the JLU podcast has not yet been listened to on.
Oh, so I could go to Antarctica and listen to the JLU podcast, and then we're heard on all continents.
Amazing! Tick it off!
International.
I cannot believe that we have, like, that many listeners, though. Like, hello, everybody.
Yes.
Please, like, get in contact. Like, let us know what it's like in your country to be LGBT, and if we should come on holiday there.
Definitely.
Please recommend it to us.
Yeah.
'Cause we're all in the UK and we're looking for ideas. So, you know.
And I think even places that just play kind of like a historical importance in the kind of like LGBT plus history, for example, New York, the Stonewall Inn, you know, the bar. I know that San Francisco, during the 1960s, a lot of LGBT plus people would go to San Francisco because there was a really, really big LGBT plus scene there. So just going to different places that have that kind of history and that feeling and that vibe, I feel like will be really nice just to see where like our roots in a way come from. Do you know what I mean? Because if those individuals hadn't done what they did, potentially we wouldn't even have this podcast. So yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I do think we're going to have to start setting up like JLU podcast bingo, where we mention like Stonewall, I mention trains, like... I feel like Stonewall is more important to mention every week. That is acceptable to mention every podcast. Trains less relevant.
There we go.
Yeah, so if you would like to get in touch with a completed bingo card, we will be accepting them on the next episode.
Will be very happy about that.
Please write in and let us know your holiday recommendations, your experiences. We really want to hear more from all of our international fans, and we look forward to getting back to you in future episodes, telling you all the interesting places we've gone when coronavirus is finished and we're allowed to go travelling again.
You're listening to Just Like Us, the monthly show for LGBT young people.
For today's Q&A discussion, we have a really interesting question, which is, why do we use the label bisexual? Which kind of relates to the fact that, I've described myself as bisexual. Heather also identifies using that word. And it's an interesting one because people are discussing which word to use for your identity becomes quite important at certain stages to certain people. Some people don't find it important which words to use. Some people don't know which words mean what and aren't really sure which word best fits them. So we just thought we'd have a little discussion about that. Do you want to kick us off, Heather?
Yeah, so I've used the label bisexual ever since I kind of first became aware of both my sexuality and the label itself when I was, I think, maybe 13. So basically I came across it on YouTube. I did come across some great YouTubers at the time, and they kind of talked about the different identities and they talked about being bisexual. I was like, that sounds like me. And I think I did kind of, there's quite a kind of a big discussion about people using bisexual or using pansexual, and kind of how people define bisexual and things. So to me, I think of bisexual as being attracted to people of the same gender as me and also different genders from me. And then pansexual is being attracted to people of all genders, is the way I kind of understand these two terms. So I wouldn't necessarily say that I couldn't use the label pansexual. I'd say the main reason I say I call myself bi is just because it was really important to me when I was young, because having a letter in the acronym, just for me, when I was just kind of felt so kind of lost and alone, I was just like, this is something I can understand and I can say, this is who I am. I'm the B in the LGBT. So I think that's kind of why I kind of associated with it at a young age. And then it's definitely partially due to just that like early attachment to it that I've kept it, but also partially because I do definitely identify with it still, if that makes sense.
It definitely does.
Definitely.
And I think that there's definitely something to be said, in terms of bisexual and pansexual being quite similar in definition. I think there is a fair amount of people who will just pick the one that more people have heard of in their social circle, which is a perfectly valid reason to, choose which word you use that best describes yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of myself, I use the label bisexual, and I have for a long time because I kind of went through my teenage years like quite confused. I sort of flip-flopped. And then I kind of got to a certain point and I was like, I can't keep having this internal dilemma about like, how am I going to identify myself? I feel so I just thought, well, I don't really know what the official word for my sexuality would be in terms of like a scientific definition. But I like the word bisexual because it leaves me open to whatever's going to happen. So, my attractions maybe so far in my life have been the vast majority towards women, feminine people. That's usually where my attraction falls. But sometimes, someone more masculine takes my interest. So I kind of like that bisexuality just leaves me a lot of room for change and growth in the future. and it's also used gender neutrally as well. So, you know, I considered using words like lesbian and gay, but within these words, they kind of don't quite work for me as someone who's non-binary, and it doesn't fit my parameters, because I wouldn't identify as lesbian because that implies two women, and gay often implies two men or two women. And that's not necessarily, strictly speaking, the case, and other people use the words in different ways. But for me, I just like the freedom of the word, and that's why I choose to use it.
I think for me, likewise with Elly, it was very kind of difficult kind of figuring out what exactly I liked. It was kind of like this process of you either have to be gay or straight. There's no kind of middle ground. There's no grey area. There's no kind of like diversity in what you can like. And I think it took me up until about the age of like 18 or 19 before I actually was like, okay, it is possible for me to be attracted to somebody who is female presenting and somebody who is male presenting. So I was just kind of like, I came to terms with the fact that this is my identity. And for me, a long time, a lot of people in general think that being bisexual is a 50-50 approach. And I think that's really, like, it's not conducive and it's not a reality, because that's just not how attraction works. And so for me, right now, I am mostly attracted to more masculine individuals, but that doesn't mean to say that there's not individuals that portray themselves in a feminine way that attract me as well. So I'm just kind of going with the flow. I still identify as bisexual. And I'm just kind of like seeing where my life kind of takes me. And, you know, labels are good in the sense, but sometimes I feel like they can be quite restricting at times. So just kind of go with it and, you know, feel it out.
Yeah, I think that point about like flexibility and kind of that like being relevant to you as an individual is so important. And also, I think just kind of like you shouldn't feel constrained by your label. Like identifying yourself as something should be helpful to you. So like it really helped me to have an identity that I felt resonated with me, because that kind of gave me clarity. Whereas if you feel like, oh, this label just really doesn't work for me, but I need to stick with it so that because I've already said it, you know, that's so false. Like these things change and you can be flexible, but also you can just be yourself within whatever you kind of identity you associate with.
Yeah, definitely. Labels are to help you and to help you find others like you in a community, especially when you're LGBT plus and you may have gone through some feelings of, am I the only one that's like this? And then you find a word which leads you to a community. But, you know, I have a close friend who doesn't want to label their sexuality, who just enjoys seeing who they find attractive and acting on that, but kind of just says, well, you know, I don't feel the need to put a word on it. I just am who I am. I'm interested in who I'm interested in, and I will, you know, be with who I feel like being with. And I think that's really great as well. You know, that's a perfectly valid option if that's what you feel like is best for you.
Definitely. Like at the end of the day, I use the label bisexual because I feel that label empowers me. And I think if it didn't, then I would, you know, consider using something else, or, you know, consider not using a label. So I think that's, when you're thinking about what label to use, that's definitely like a criteria that you can kind of consider.
Yeah, well, I think we've gone over a lot there, but I mean, these questions are so interesting and really fruitful to dig into. So again, like if anyone has any questions, discussion points they'd like us to go over in this Q&A segment, please send them into the podcast. You can send them through messages on our social media at Just Like Us UK. And yeah, let us know what you want us to talk about and what you'd like us to answer if you've got any questions.
You're listening to Just Like Us, the monthly show for LGBT young people.
So, Elly, this month, in case that it does continue to be these 30-odd degrees, what's your best tip to stay cool in the heat?
I put a wet flannel in the freezer, and then I take it out when I go to bed, and I put it on my face when I'm going to sleep. And Heather is pulling the most disgusted face at me that I've ever seen in my life. Arbër's like not even looking at me. I feel like I don't put it like in with my food. Like it's not in with like slices of onion or anything. Yeah. It's in like a separate bit. But like I really like having something to cool me down, because the worst thing is when you can't get to sleep. So that's my tip, which it seems like it's gone down very badly with my other co-hosts. So no one is going to try. Who has a better tip than that?
Well, I have a niece and she's been coming around more frequently because we have a garden, and they bring a massive paddling pool for her, and I've just been diving into that paddling pool consistently for the last 2 days. So that's what I've been doing to cool down, and I've actually recently just bought like 3 fans just to have one in like every corner of my house so that I can always have the breeze.
I'm so jealous.
So yeah,
That does sound, the
that's my
paddling
thing.
pool sounds so good. I've been enjoying, because I like the heat, but I do also like, you know, a little bit of refreshment. So I have been enjoying rocket ice lollies. So I had these the other day, and I've just been thinking about it a lot. And obviously the red bit is the best bit, but it's also the smallest bit. And I was thinking, why doesn't somebody reverse the order of the rocket ice lolly so that the red's at the bottom and then the orange and then the yellow? And I'm like, I think this could be a game changer, guys. Like,
you are like an entrepreneur. This is
I
amazing.
think like I can see it in the shops already, like new and improved rocket ice
Definitely.
lolly.
I would be buying that, definitely. You're a genius.
On that note, we are going to say goodbye to you guys. Hopefully we've given you an insight on different places you can visit and, you know, make those kind of holiday plans for the future. Bye from me.
Bye from me.
Bye, guys.
Have a great week, everyone.
Speak to you next month.
Bye.
You've been listening to Just Like Us, the monthly show for LGBT young people. The music was by Twisterium. We come into schools too. Young people, teachers and parents can find us at www.justlikeus.org.